Are the Iranians or others in the region thinking differently about nuclear proliferation because of what we're seeing with this horrible war going on in Europe?
Look, it's not a new lesson for the Iranians. They remember Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi in Libya, who basically gave away their nuclear programs and were invaded by the US or NATO. They have seen how President Trump treated North Korea, which is all armed with nuclear weapons, with respect, versus Iran, that was obviously complying with its obligations under the nuclear deal. President Trump withdrew from that and reimposed sanctions. So it's not necessarily a new lesson. Again, as I said, I think Iran's nuclear calculus is based on two main factors. Number one is the fact that they know if they cross the Rubicon and develop nuclear weapons, the strategic balance of power becomes basically a nuclear game on how many nuclear weapons you have, how sophisticated they are, whether you have second strike capabilities or not. And a lot of the dimensions of Iranian power in terms of size, population, depth of history, statehood, all of that would disappear in a balance of power that is dictated by nuclear deterrence. And Iran's neighbors often have better resources and better alliances. So it's a risk that I don't think Iran really wants to take. Its policy has always been on hedging and providing itself with an option of going nuclear if indeed there is a threat that would justify that. And the second element is, as I said, the fact that they do believe that if they dash towards nuclear weapons, they would probably pay a huge price in terms of a military strike before they are able to reach their objective.
Well, since I asked you about Russia-Ukraine, I do want to ask about the Russia relationship with Iran. Historically, they've been seen as one of the friendlier countries towards Iran, certainly in terms of their cooperation around propping Assad up in Syria. And yet the Russians came out not so long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, and said, we're prepared to quash any possibility of getting back into this Iranian deal unless you give us guarantees. How's that viewed in Tehran, and how much of a spanner in the works do you think that the statement by Lavrov, the foreign minister, Russian foreign minister, actually represents?
The Iranians were definitely surprised by it. They asked for clarification from Moscow, and they were disappointed because Russia is one of the sole allies that Iran has on the international stage. And for them to deprive Iran from getting sanctions relief only because Russia is now subject of similarly draconian sanctions did not make any sense to the Iranians. My own guess is that this was a Russian tactical gambit to see if they can leverage the nuclear deal with Iran, to which they are a major stakeholder and a guarantor, as a way of punching a hole in the Western sanctions regime against Russia. When it became clear that that's not going to happen, and when they realized that there was a popular backlash in Iran against Russia, they decided to walk back these demands. And in a matter of weeks, the Iranians managed to convince Moscow to back off.
So you've told me at the beginning of this discussion that you're sick of making predictions on all this, and I get it. But having now heard all of your views on what's going on around the deal, it seems to me that if you had to make a call, you'd say you think it's going to happen.
Well, again, I think because the alternatives really range from unattractive to outright ugly for both sides, and because they have invested so much into this deal that has become now too big to fail, that the odds of success are higher. I would put them maybe at 60% right now. But there's still 40% chance of miscalculation because both sides believe that the other needs the deal more. And so is willing to make concessions on some of the remaining issues that, by definition, are the toughest ones that have been left to the very end.